Hello, friends. Well, we want to thank you for dropping on by. It's been a jam-packed day. I know things have been incredibly crazy back on your end, so we appreciate you carving out time to be with us. So my name is Luke Amargo. I'm a YPN Phx board member and a moderator for this amazing session. We will be focusing on being a fundraiser in the time of COVID, and this is going to be a panel discussion. So I wanted to introduce our moderator, of course, the person leading the event. So I'm the moderator for this session. For this session, we're going to have Adrian, who'll be talking about sharing about their experience when it comes to fundraising. And so I'm going to read a little bit about Adrian. Adrian Jamieson moved to Arizona in 2013 to pursue a master's degree in public administration at ASU and has since been an active member of the Arizona nonprofit community. Adrian brings a strong background in development, volunteer management, and community partnerships. Before joining BBBSAZ, Adrian most recently served as the Research and Program Development Manager at Voices for Casa Children, and prior to that worked with Inspire Arizona, a youth development program focused on building civic engagement among high school students dedicated to serving Arizona children. Adrian has a heart for a mission that serves those who are most vulnerable. Adrian is a member of the Association of Fundraising Professionals and currently represents BBBAZ on the 2020 Census Complete Count Committee for the City of Phoenix. Oof. Adrian is also a board member for the Young Nonprofit Professionals Network of Arizona and serves as a rookie member of Sons Charity. As a reminder, we'll be saving the questions for the very end. So right now, your videos will all be hidden and your microphones should be muted. Please feel free to use the chat box on the right to ask any questions in the meantime. Without further ado, we'd love to present Adrian Jamieson. Thank you so much for joining us, Adrian.
Hi guys, that was a totally unnecessary introduction because I plan to do as little speaking as possible. We have four amazing panelists to discuss our topics today. And what I'd like to do is we have a couple questions. I think it's important for them all to have a chance to speak on, but please start putting your questions in the chat box now. Luke and I will keep an eye on them, and then we'll give our panelists the opportunity to address those. So to get started, each of our panelists deserves a very long introduction. They've all done amazing things. But what I'd like to do is have them introduce themselves, what their title is, but more importantly, what their role is at their organization and how maybe that role has changed since we've started adapting to COVID. All right, so Jessie, if you wanna start.
I'm happy to start. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up. Okay, thanks. So my name is Jessie Wright, and my title is Director of Development, Alumni, and Community Relations, and I work at Paradise Valley Community College. I've been there for about a year and a half almost, and my team is charged with building a culture of philanthropy for the college. I lead a team of 3, and we engage donors, alumni, our community in meaningful relationships, and we invite them to give their time, treasure, talent to enhance the opportunities for our students at the community college. And I guess to transform our community as well, to be totally honest. Truly, COVID-19 hasn't really changed our responsibilities too much. We act as superhero facilitators. We bring donors in, ask them how they want the world to look, and then we try to help them make the world look like that. So we do a lot of that still. The only thing that's really changed for us is sort of our method of delivery, and I think we're gonna get into that later. So we can just touch on those later. But I just wanna thank everybody for being here with open hearts, minds, souls, all that important stuff. And thanks for joining us virtually. And I'm so honored to be here and really grateful for the opportunity. So thank you all so much.
Awesome. Jessie has the greatest title of all time, I'm pretty sure. Hallie, you want to go?
Hi, everyone. So great to see everyone. I love seeing everyone's names, and I miss you all. Thanks, as Jessie said, for coming today during these times. It's really great to be able to connect with everyone. My name's Hallie Rexer, for those of you who do not know me, and I'm the Senior Development Officer at the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law at Arizona State University. I've been here, next week will be 1 year, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I absolutely love it. And my primary responsibilities include working with a portfolio of donors really around major gifts and mid-level gifts. And then I also oversee all of our annual giving. And I get to work very closely with our students. I'm our student liaison for fundraising, which is one of the best parts of my job because I really get to engage with them on a close level and get to know them. And I would say, yeah, similar to Jessie, you know, our duties really haven't changed here. You know, I think at this time, they're maybe more important than ever before to ensure that our students are getting the support that they need during all of this. And it's just really the method has changed significantly. I don't know the last time I saw a donor face-to-face, it would have been probably the first week of March. And so that has changed fundraising, but we'll get into that shortly. So thank you guys all for joining us.
Awesome, thank you. And we'll toss it over to Katie.
Okay, happy Wednesday, everybody. I am the Director of Development for St. Joseph the Worker. So as you all are aware, all things development, including volunteerism, events, you know the jam, all of that. And so our duties have not changed very much. We have become more autonomous. So meaning our executive director had to go focus on programming and getting program prepared for the masses of people that need employment, and also to work with the bigwigs. So we have been very autonomous in our work and are going forth in that way. And that has been very enjoyable for me as well.
Great, glad you could come. And then we'll move to our last panelist, Tanner.
Hi, I am Tanner. I am the treasurer with YNPN, and I am also the donor communications manager for A New Leaf. I've been here about 3 years. We've all had very, very different experiences with how COVID has affected our operations. So at A New Leaf, we saw a reduction in staff of 7 on a team of 19. So we dropped 7 employees in about 2 weeks. And so for me, that meant that I took over all of our marketing, as well as managing our annual fund and assisting programs with all of their development. So we saw a lot of change.
Tanner, maybe you can build off that a little bit, because I know that this epidemic has caused a lot of new challenges, but it's also created some opportunities for us to be innovative. And I knew you are one of the most innovative people on this call. Maybe you can speak to some of the ways you've been doing that.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, there's always an opportunity to treat, the best innovations come out of necessity, right? And so for us, we've treated, especially the lack of capacity, as an opportunity for very compelling investments in technology and strategy, which, let's face it, a lot of nonprofits overinvest sometimes in human capital that can be done by really building a good, proper strategy that doesn't require as much maintenance. And that's what we're really hoping to do here. So I'll give some examples. One of the things that we've really pushed for is getting an integrated, so we have a CRM to manage our donor communications with all of our donors. And one of the things that we've wanted for a very long time, but we couldn't quite justify, was an automated engagement system, not just automated emailing, but something that surveys your donors, tracks interest, tracks levels of participation, and then this third-party vendor actively sends those leads to our major gift officers, and then also to me. So this is something that really occupies, you know, a prospect researcher, someone to actively manage communications. So what we did was we went and we took all of our stories, photos, videos from the last 3 years, and we handed them over to this company to build content pipelines for over a year so that we don't have to do that. Which is to say, it does have certain consequences of, you know, we have a little bit less control over our content. We don't have as much high touch opportunities with donors because we relegate that outwards, and then we try to make the fewer touches that we do have more intentional. So it's caused a lot of change in how we actually do our fundraising as a department, but it's been good. Some of the smaller things too is, you know, with the crisis, it's definitely encouraged everybody, I feel, to be more comfortable sharing our needs. One of the things I've really noticed has been innovations in messaging, more so in the fact that people are more comfortable being vulnerable, which all the research shows is what gets you results. You know, all of my favorite bars or restaurants or what have you, the ones getting by are the ones who sent an email out when they had an existential threat and said, we need help, we need it now, and you're our community. Because one of two things will happen. Either you don't have that community and you won't survive, and you wouldn't have survived if you hadn't asked, and you won't survive if you do ask. But the better scenario is you'll make it because your community cares about you. And I know all of us come from really meaningful communities who care about the things that we do, especially I know I'm in social services, so we're a little insulated from some of the funding challenges organizationally as a whole. But I would also encourage to embrace that and really push your executive level staff to embrace some of those things. There's a lot of unifying opportunities when there's a shared threat.
Yeah, that's a great point. I love that. And you had a question as you're talking, what CRM do you guys use at New Leaf?
So we use Razor's Edge, which is a really great, robust system. It's kind of like it does everything, and it has a lot of great integration features with other services. The automation feature service that we decided to go with was called Market Smart, which is kind of a smaller vendor, but they do really great work.
Awesome, thanks. Jesse, would you like to share how you guys have kind of had to use innovation to address some of these challenges, you and your team?
Sure thing. Happy to. So when we first moved into a work from home environment at the college, I'm going to be totally honest with you, I sort of had a mild freak out because I manage a team and I wasn't really sure how we were going to do in an online environment. So I watched a ton of webinars. I mean, a ton. And two of my favorite takeaways from the webinars that I watched, one said, there are no best practices right now. We're building them. And that was really, that really hit home with me and resonated because it made me feel a little bit better that maybe not having all the answers is okay. And then the second thing was crisis kills the status quo and breeds innovation. And that makes me so excited. So very excited. I'm like looking at you guys nodding. I'm like, yes. And especially Tanner over there, who is like the king of innovation, truly. And it makes me really excited. But then on top of all of the innovation that's coming, I think we were also reminded to sort of go back to basics, right? So it's relationships and fundraising matter. Not only do relationships matter, but authentic and vulnerable relationships matter. And we're getting so many emails and so much is being sent out and we're on screens all day long. And that gets a little bit exhausting for people and it gets exhausting for our donors. So my team sort of rediscovered a love of the handwritten letter. And so we've been writing a ton of handwritten notes, which isn't really innovation, but it's it felt innovative in a way because we hadn't really done that. We've been so focused on doing things online. And then we've been doing welfare check phone calls where we're just calling donors and saying, hey, are you okay? How are you? And they've been received really, really, really well. It's been very appreciated. And I will shout out to Tanner about 1 million times during anything I have to say during this panel discussion. But Tanner really helped me, and then through me, my team and my college realize the benefit of raw, unedited video. So people, I love Tanner, like, yes, people want to see video. We're kind of tired of reading, I think. So we've sort of gotten a little bit uncomfortable in just recording video on our cell phone and sharing it and learning how to do some video editing and checking stuff out. It's impactful. It is impactful to have unpolished video. Let me tell you, I highly recommend it. Tanner can echo that 1 million times. And I think it's really interesting because in the last just few months, we've raised $25,000 in about 3 months. And that's a lot of money for our college. It's a lot. And we've been doing that with email appeals, personal asks. One was $10,000, which is great. And then with video, I mean, and we couldn't have done it. We could not have done it. So, but it's a mixture of basics and innovation, I think. It's my long-winded answer.
I love it. Long-winded away. We have plenty of time. And this is going to be a circle of thank yous because I have to thank Jesse. I was really nervous at first to reach out to my donors and start wellness calls. What were they going to think? Did they think I'm just calling to bother them, to ask for money when they're stressed about other things. And, you know, she gave some insight on how her calls were going and some language she used, and it helped me so much. And I have to say, every donor appreciated the phone call. So thank you so much for that. Hallie, tell me how you've been innovating in major gifts. What does that look like for you and your team?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of exactly what you guys are saying with the wellness checks. For us, it's really been a lot of, hey, you guys have supported us so much, how can we support you? And I think being at the law school, we do have capacity to help. We have students who were able to do actual research for other lawyers if they own a small firm. And something that we started early on with our major donors, we had a very small, intimate Zoom lunch hour with our dean to give an update. And, you know, it was a really small group of some of our biggest donors, and all of them were, you know, had a great dynamic conversation about what this looks like in the legal world and how we can support students, how we can support projects. And after it went so well, we decided we think that this is really what our community is looking for right now. And so almost every week, if not every other week, we have then hosted a webinar series, starting with our dean and our faculty. And so some of the ones that we have had for the community have been on health law and policy, immigration law, and bankruptcy law. And having those conversations with our alumni, donors, it allows them to understand what is changing in the legal world around those topics so they can better educate themselves. But it also helps for them. For example, immigration law is changing significantly, and it helps them provide resources to other constituents and they're around bankruptcy as well. And so I think for us, it's really been, how can we support you right now? And then from those conversations, we have had some donors who have not been hit financially as hard as others reach out to us and say, okay, what do you want me to be doing? And so it's been, you know, a great way to connect with individuals in a different way. And for us, our alumni are all over the country. So I do see us using this moving forward as a way to keep our alumni community connected, especially in areas that we're not able to get to within the next year or as often as we would like.
Yeah, I imagine that is a unique challenge, having your supporters all across the country. You do have to be more creative in the way that you're addressing them, as the problems are different in every community. But I love that you're using this as an opportunity to kind of re-demonstrate your value to the support. So that's awesome. All right, Katie, another creative mind. Tell us what you've been doing.
All right. So when I first started at St. Joseph the Worker as the development director, my executive director, who I love with all of my heart, said, Katie, you need to stop thinking so much. And so I have taken that very seriously. I didn't know what he meant at the time, but now I know. So in this space, I have taken time to step back and observe more. Keep it simple, stupid. Like that phrase right there has done everything for me. I'm observing and letting things come to me and fall together organically. And that has been the biggest treat of my life. And things have come from this that, like, it's blowing my mind what St. Joseph the Worker is up to right now. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it. But our biggest innovation has been just keeping it really, really simple and making sure that our lives are balanced and we're not taking on too much. And the lovely part of St. Joseph the Worker is we do one thing so we can innovate in that one space. And it's easy to do when you do one thing. So I loved keeping it simple, and I've loved just stepping back and observing and letting things happen, and then taking the reins and taking it from there.
Awesome. I know that one of the things you guys are all doing, and a few of you have touched on already, is a big part of development is building those relationships. And you know, you've pointed out, when's the last time you got to meet with a donor in person? It's been a while, for sure. And we've had events canceled, and the ways that we would normally continue to engage with people just aren't available to us. So maybe Katie, you can start us off. How have you been working to continue to build new relationships and maintain those relationships you already had to kind of keep your donors informed?
So again, when I started as development director, this was the first time that St. Joseph the Worker had a development director and a development team. So I got to build it, which has been really nice and lovely to do it how we want to do. And I took note from our program team, who meets every client truly where they're at as an individual. There's no cookie cutter, there's no cookie cutter trainings or anything. It's one-on-one every single client. So what I've encouraged people to do on my team is meet them where they're at. Like, don't put together a sponsor packet, just have a conversation. What do they want? Like, do they want their name on there? Maybe they don't. Maybe they want something else. Maybe they want to hand out swag or something like that. I don't know. Or pick up the phone if someone calls and or emails and says, I want to help. Pick up the phone and call them and like figure it out and be honest. Like Tanner said, like tell them what you need and be honest and figure out a way. But don't like loosen your grip on things or wiggle out of your mission or focus to accommodate them. Like let them know what you need. And I found that people really appreciate that. It's been lovely. We've had a lot of good feedback from just, again, keeping it simple and trying to meet people truly where they're at.
Awesome. What about you, Tanner? Or Jesse, is that a hand raise or a clap?
It was a clap.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, you go ahead. And then we'll hit it. We'll pass it to Tanner.
We'll go out of order. Okay. So I've never been like a shove people down and steal their lunch money kind of fundraiser. That's not the game that I play. I don't like that game. And it's been really cool for me to see that other colleagues in my field, in our field, right, are advocating for the importance of relationship-based fundraising right now. And they're also advocating for the importance of having trained fundraisers in our field. It's cool. I think it's awesome. I love. Oh, clapping is so fun with these reactions. Sorry, I'm like seeing clapping. I'm like, yay! It makes. Oh, thanks, Julie. It's so fun. But I think that it's important, and I've noticed that there are a lot of organizations that are laying off their fundraising teams, and I just want to take them and shake them and be like, "What are you doing? Don't do that." But relationship building right now it obviously looks different. So instead of asking for coffee, we're asking, can we have, like a Zoom happy hour? Can we have a Zoom coffee? Can we have lunch over Zoom? And some donors are really into it and others just aren't. But I think those relationships matter and they're deep. And I think that if we can continue to build deep, meaningful relationships with donors, we're going to be fine throughout this entire thing, because if we're connecting donors to their passions and they're passionate about the work that we're doing, our organizations will be fine. I just firmly believe that to my core. But it's just different to build relationships that way. It is picking up the phone. It's building one-on-one relationships, and it's asking people what they want to do. But I love that you said this, Katie, keeping in mind, like, we don't want mission drift. We need to stay in our mission, but also involve people, and build those relationships. So that's what we've been doing. It's just different. It's the same work, but through a different method.
Right. You're still having genuine conversations with people, meeting them where they're at. That's a great way to say it. Tanner and Shelly, and Luke, I see the questions coming through, and Shelly's question is so big and so important. I'd love to save it to the end because I want everyone to have time to address it. So Tanner, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll speak to, I want to ask too, if you want to put in the chat, how many of us on this call have more complex organizations? Like a New Leaf does 35 different programs, from foster care to homelessness to education to all sorts of things. So if there's people on the call, I'd be happy to kind of speak to how do you deal with a really complex ask. But one of the things that I think is important to look at too, especially if you're trying to operate at scale and with reduced staff, is thinking about how does your relationship dynamic extend into your communication strategy as a whole. And so one of the things that we did at a New Leaf over the last 6 months was we don't send out a single branded email at all anymore. Every single email comes from a person within our department, and it's all associated with the purpose of the email. So if we're asking for a gift, it's going to be one of our major gift officers. If it's a content email, it's going to come from me as donor communications manager. If it's a seasonal solicitation, it's coming from our CEO or our chief philanthropy officer. And what we found with that is that our two-way communication more than like quadruples of people actually sending emails back to us because they feel like they're communicating with a real person, which is what they can do if they respond. Because what happens when you respond to a branded email, typically somebody gets back to you. It just makes it a more authentic experience for them in the first place. And that extends to Jesse. I'm so happy to hear that, the video content works. And I saw a question about donors not open to Zoom meetings. Shoot them a video. It's a really great way. Put it on YouTube, make it private so no one else can see it, and tell them that, and then just send it to them, and you know, ping them until they flip and watch the thing, because they will. You know, it works. And it's important to think about that also in terms of your website too. Of, are you telling your donors, you know, what you're doing right now? Are you making it clear what your need is on your website and your donation page and how it's unique right now? All of those things kind of play into that relationship, because if you're a donor, most of your relationship isn't with a person, it's with the institution. And it's important to kind of keep that in mind.
Great point. I know I at least get worried sometimes about over communicating with donors, and I have to remember, yes, this is top of mind for me, but not necessarily top of mind for them all the time. And they just very often need a nudge or 5 for a response. So, Hallie?
Yeah, I think these are all really great points. And I think kind of what Jesse had already talked about is bringing it back to the basics. So something that I've been doing and my team has been doing is sending out coffee to a lot of my donors and prospects who I was hoping to have coffee with. So I send them, you know, we ordered a ton of coffee from Trader Joe's with a handwritten card, and just mail it over to them and say, you know, unfortunately, I know we can't get coffee right now, but I'm really thinking about you and looking forward to getting coffee again. Or if that's really not applicable for you guys, and you have a little bit of a budget, sending them an gift card to a local coffee shop. So then you're supporting that local coffee shop or that local restaurant as well. And just saying, hey, treating you guys to lunch, you know, where we would have spent that money on the lunch that I was going to have with that person anyway. And now I'm not buying myself lunch, so I'm kind of saving a little bit. But you're also showing we're here to help the local community too. And I think that those have gone over really well for us, for me at least. I think it definitely helped stand out. You know, they were, any person I sent that to, I've gotten a really positive response, and then it's open to conversation where then I can say, well, how are you really doing? Like, let's jump on a call just to check in. Additionally, as I mentioned, we're hosting the webinars. And so if an individual did not join the webinar, I'll send them a link of the recording and just say, hey, I thought you or maybe someone on your team would be interested in this resource. And if they did, I try to follow up with them after in a pretty quick timeline to say, hey, why don't we jump on a call and you and I can chat about what your key takeaways were. So I think it's really kind of building those authentic conversations like everyone is talking about. We're really all relationship people, and so are our donors. So having authentic conversations with them where it's not about money, it's just really about what's happening. And, you know, they tend to ask, well, how can I help? Is there a project I can send to a student, or, you know, what that really looks like. So it's been pretty great.
It's so cool to hear what you guys are all doing, and you make it sound so easy, but it's just not. It's just not easy, and it's not fun every day. And I can speak, I've heard you guys say it, I've certainly felt it. But for some reason, some of these things feel harder right now. You know, our work as fundraisers has always been directly connected to how well we are able to implement our missions, how close we can get to our visions. But it feels, for some fundraisers, a lot more real right now. Our work and the results of our work can make the difference in whether other staff are laid off, or if our fundraising team is diminished, or what resources are available for the increased need that all of our organizations are facing right now. So how are you guys managing that personally and in your work every day, that sense of responsibility? Hallie, would you like to go?
Sure. Yeah, I think, I mean, all of us in the public sector are really empathetic people. And so I do think that we're really feeling this. I know all of us probably know people who have been laid off or have been furloughed. And it's really hard not to worry about yourself or your friends that are in these kind of positions. But I think that this is a great time for us all to really work on our own mental health. I think also as fundraisers, we're really outgoing people. I know personally, I get all of my energy from being around my coworkers, my friends, my donors. Even having a great lunch with a donor, I leave having a wonderful day, just having that connection with people. And I personally live by myself, so removing that has been very difficult for me as well. And it's just really finding what works for you. Anyone who knows me knows I work out a lot. And so I've just really been diving into that and leaning into that more, where that is the time during the day that I can schedule. It's a consistent thing for me. And that has really been helpful for me, where every day I don't know what's happening in the world, but knowing, okay, this is the time I have blocked off for myself has been really helpful. And then also just looking for ways to connect with colleagues. So I try to have a few virtual coffees throughout the week, just to really not necessarily talk about work, but to check in with colleagues, with friends. And then that way I'm still able to get some form of connection with individuals. But I think that this has been a great time to really figure out what that is for you, because I think these skills that we're learning about mental health for ourselves will be able to continue to carry forward. You know, a lot of us have some mission fatigue sometimes, where we work and hear really hard stories. And so then I think learning more about ourselves with our mental health will just help us in the long run.
What about you, Tanner?
Yeah, I think she's definitely right. You know, you got to take time for yourself. And one of the things that we've made a point of doing here is making sure that staff are still taking time off. If they have vacation time, if they need sick days, to make that a priority, because the worst thing you can do is burn out, because your organizations really need you more than ever. Let's see. But one of the things that I want to echo too from Katie is keeping it simple, stupid. Because if you try to, especially if you had staff reductions, I know firsthand, if you try to maintain your level of capacity that you had when you had 7 additional staff, you can't do it. And it doesn't feel good to not succeed in that strategy. So I know for us, for example, we've given up on donor acquisition entirely, and we are entirely focused on retention, because we know, you know, it's an election year, so any media buys are going to be really expensive. We know that. Can you see anything on your Facebook feed that's not what's happening right now? You know, like, you can't. So we're really focusing, you know, keep it simple, focus on what you have control over, because there's so much I know that we don't have control over right now. And so if you try to control something that you can't, you're in for a little bit of trouble there. So I would just encourage you, really stay focused on the things that matter to you. Focus on those individual donors and relationships, because those are also healing, you know, as a donor, as a fundraiser. You know, the friendships that you have with your donors are usually pretty authentic, and that can be healing in and of itself. So I would say, just make sure you take time for yourself and make sure that you're really focusing on what you have the power to do.
Cool. Hallie, do you want to share some thoughts? No, sorry, you've already gone. You've already gone, Jessie.
Sure. So, I mean, our missions just matter so much, y'all. And we know that. We know that on my campus, we know that a lot of our students were really negatively impacted by COVID-19. We know that our students are concerned about what's happening all over the world right now, constantly. But we have to put our oxygen masks on first. And that's a thing that I struggle with every single day. I frequently forget to put on my own oxygen mask, and then I'm, you know, dead somewhere, like drowning. And we can't do that because what is oxygen? We have to take care of ourselves too, right? And I very frequently, I remind myself, it is not my responsibility to save the whole world. I need to put my energy into things that I can control. I need to create some separation. You're totally right. Compassion fatigue is a real thing. And I've appreciated in this quarantine space, having the opportunity to have the space for journaling, for reflection. And now that I've started doing that in quarantine, I'm finding ways to build it into my schedule, because I've found it to be so healing for me and so good for my own self-care. I started keeping a gratitude journal for work in January. It was part of my New Year's resolution. So every single day I write down one where is it? It's somewhere on my desk. I write down one thing in my gratitude journal that went well at work today. And that is so helpful to me. And then once we went into this work from home space where we're on Zoom calls all the time, most days I'm on back-to-back Zoom calls for almost the entire day, and it's really draining. I realized that I needed a clear switch between digital and analog work. So I started, at the end of the day, I turn completely off my laptop, and then I pull out my gratitude journal, and with a real pen, I write in my gratitude journal my one thing. And then I take like 4 really deep, nourishing breaths. And then I move on with my life into my outside, my bedroom life. And I go for we call it a family walk with my husband and my dog. And it is the best thing ever. And it's simple and it's easy. And I feel like a sane human person. And then I also feel better equipped to do my job, right? And fulfill our mission that's really important. We all have really important missions. So you got to take care of yourself. Figure out what works for you.
Yeah, you have to figure out what works. So Katie, what's working for you? Is she frozen? Okay, we'll come back. We'll come back to Katie. But we did have a really important question kind of come up on this from Nick about another topic that's really kind of difficult to talk about, but one we don't want to shy away from. So, you know, in addition to the challenges we're encountering as fundraisers related to coronavirus, there's also this social justice movement that's occurring in our country, in our communities right now, that's just grounded in dismantling systematic racism. And nonprofits have a very unique role in that conversation, and so do fundraisers. So how are you as fundraisers participating in that conversation, and how can we advocate for change in our own organizations and our communities? And Katie, you want to do that one? You back?
I'm sorry, I lost internet connection for a little bit, but that's my standard day at this house. I'm sorry that I missed out. I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yes, no worries. So we are talking about in what capacity fundraisers can play a role in moving forward equity, diversity, and inclusion in our own organizations and in our community as a whole, as part of the larger conversation that's going on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I start to think of that, I start to think of systems, and in order to change a system, you have to understand a system, and you have to go through a system. You have to really learn a lot about it. So in our work, I'm learning a lot about how the system kind of traps people almost, and having those conversations. Like, I grew up in a family where it was like, we do not talk about that. We don't talk about our politicals or our feelings or anything like that. We just keep it nice and fluffy. And what this being a nonprofit, what's going on right now has allowed me to do is have conversations. I've been able to talk to my parents about some of these things that are going on and the different viewpoints. I've been able to also shut up. I really like talking, and I have taken it upon myself to stop. Just stop talking. You have no right to talk right now. And so knowing when to have a conversation and also knowing when to shut up, and that's a hard balance for a lot of us, in particular if you're like me, you're feeling
it might be her audio.
And also donating, like, oh no, sorry. Sorry. Oh,
you're back.
You were on a roll
going.
It was
I was on a roll. Yeah, I like talking. Okay, I don't know where I left off, but having those uncomfortable conversations, leaning into discomfort. When you're feeling discomfort, it means you're doing something right, but also knowing when to maybe not talk. And donating. Donate when you can.
Yeah. Hallie, what about you?
Yeah, I think that, this is a really hard and emotional conversation. And I mean, Jesse and I were texting ahead of this, like, well, we might all cry on camera, and we're just going to lean into that. But I think as a fundraiser, you have to really be thinking about what you're doing. So for example, a couple weeks ago, we made a mailed appeal that was being printed this week, and we canceled it. And, you know, we are going to pay for the printing and deal with that. But we just said it's so insensitive for us to be sending this appeal right now. That's not where people need to focus their energy. But however, there are programs that we are providing that are supporting things. So now's our time to highlight those and to help ensure that if we are providing, so for example, we have the Arizona Legal Center, which is a free volunteer legal aid that supports the community. So anyone in the Valley can get free legal services. So we're really pushing that out there for the community. We also have a program called Academy for Justice. We've had it for a few years. And this is a project that has been advancing criminal justice reform, not only here in Arizona, but across the country. And then we also have a First Amendment clinic, which has been one of the strongest advocates for the freedom of press and access to information. And so we're really trying to highlight these areas to ensure that we are providing support for our community. I'm not sure if you saw, but earlier this week, Michael Crow put out a message, you know, really challenging all deans, faculty, and students to outline strategies for protecting and defending the rights of our fellow students. And it just really makes me happy that, you know, he's really challenging us, and that's what the law school is doing and embracing. And so I think as a fundraiser, if you are working, you know, for a program that is supporting this cause and this social justice movement, by all means, get out there and be sure to be helping promote that. If you're not, maybe it's time to step back a little bit and see what other ways you can help and what other ways your programs are helping, but promote maybe volunteerism in a different way. So then we're directing dollars to where they need them most at this time. And that's hard to say, but I think really we have to be thoughtful about the messaging that we're all providing.
Yeah, definitely. And I love how you keep bringing it back to demonstrating your value, right? Because that's what we're here to do. Tanner, what about you?
You know, I'll speak more from an institutional side because I know that a New Leaf has been Mesa-based for so long and really rooted in the suburbs out here that we've dealt with the challenge of board diversity and some of those things, especially as we extend to serve the entire Valley. And, you know, I don't know if right now, but now or very soon is a great time to have a discussion about what are specific efforts being done to make sure that your board is giving proper voice and representation to the communities that you're serving. I know that we tend to struggle with that, and even as fundraisers, you know, you want to get the heavy hitter people, and sometimes you get rooted in a single community, and it's difficult to find supporters or people outside of that. But oftentimes too, if you listen, a lot of the communities with wealth are small business owners and people who want to be engaged, and those have very different demographics than you know, people who don't look at the data might think. So I would just really try to think about how are you committing to making sure that you're properly engaging the communities that should be, and also making sure that you do it in the right way too. You know, I love hearing from Hallie about, you know, canceling an appeal and making sure that you're saying the right things at the right time, because it's just really important. Yeah.
All right, Jesse.
I don't know that I can add a whole lot in here because everything that I kind of was thinking about ahead of time, you guys have already mentioned. I've really been trying to process this question over the last few days, especially. I'm in a position of leadership at my organization, and that's a blessing, and it's also really, really hard to lead right now. It's really hard. So I've been working to try to, you know, create a space where my team can share ideas, we can share ideas with our president, we can share how we're feeling in a kind of safe safe space. And that's sometimes really hard to make sure that that space is there. So I think I don't have any of the right answers. I have none of the right answers. And and I'm trying, and it's really hard as a person who likes to have answers. But I'm trying, and I'm trying to learn, and I'm trying to encourage our organization to learn and change and evolve by sharing articles that I'm reading, which have not always been well received in the last week. I think that, you know, like Katie said, it's really important to listen, right? And especially if we're donor-centered fundraisers, that's about listening, and that's about asking lots of questions and listening a lot more than we talk. I totally agree with Tanner about building better boards that focus on diversity and inclusion, and making sure that we're not just checking a box, right? We need boards with action. We need boards that do things, and we cannot just check boxes. That's nonsense. That is a time of the past, and it's hard to change. It's hard to change these systems. And I think I tell my team sometimes that what we do feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back a lot to affect big change. And we can't stop trying to affect change in this way. The other thing that I've been thinking a lot about is the term most qualified candidate in a space of hiring, because I don't know that that serves us. And so I would encourage this group and everyone that's listening here to really think about what a most qualified candidate looks like. If you look around your organization and everybody looks like you, I think that's a problem. So how do we move away from they were the most qualified candidate, so we hired them? I don't think that serves our organizations. And that phrase, I think, is really, it has deep institutional problems. And we need to change that. I don't know how, but it needs to change. And I have no answers. So that's where we're at, Adrian.
That's perfect. No, that's a really just like succinct example of the types of things we're trying to address. So thank you for bringing that up. And I'd love to kind of build on something that Katie mentioned. We have power as fundraisers, but we also have power as an individual donor. Everyone on this call, I'm sure, is at some level donating to an organization and is participating as a philanthropist in our communities. So we're going to kind of flip it around a little bit here and tell me what it is you look at when you're looking at investing in an organization or in a mission. How are you choosing which organizations to support, and how do you evaluate those opportunities as a donor? If you want
me to start, Adrian?
Yeah.
Okay. So obviously there are hundreds of thousands of millions of great organizations to support, right? We have like 1.56 million in the United States alone. That's a lot of nonprofit organizations. So I think of my role as a fundraiser as being a superhero facilitator, which is my favorite thing about my job. So, right, we talk to donors about how we want the world to improve, and then we just help them understand how our organization can help create that world, right? And then we invite them to give. It's an awesome job, awesome. So in my role as a philanthropist and a fundraiser, and I would encourage all of you to do the same thing, we have to ask ourselves the same questions that we ask our donors. And one of my favorite questions to ask my donors is, what's the most meaningful thing you can do with your money? And it gets to the core of your passion. It gets to the core of what you want to change in the world. And your philanthropy should definitely align with your value system, with your priorities, where you donate your money and your time and your talent. All of that needs to align with your personal values. I would also argue that the organization that you work with should probably align with your personal values in some way, shape, or form. It's much easier to fundraise for an organization that you're aligned with on a deep level like that. So for me, I support education. Obviously, I work as a fundraiser at a college. I support my alma maters. I support my own college, obviously. I think that feeding people is really important. So I support organizations that do that. I support YNPN Phx greatly, yes, because I want our nonprofit sector to be robust and diverse and vibrant, and I want more for our community, and I think that young nonprofit professionals can do that, so that's important to me. So I support YNPN. And then I support Hope through Make-A-Wish, because I think that granting wishes for kids is very important. So I have to do that. And then right now I'm researching how I can make the most impact in all of the injustices in our world nationally. So how can I start to correct institutional racism with my dollars, with my money? I'm a pretty savvy donor, so I do a lot of research. I want the biggest bang for my buck. I want to make sure that my money is being used in the right way. I'm reading annual reports. I'm reading 990s. I am digging deep. And I think that it has to align with things I care about. If you're mad about something, rage give, right? You have to fix it. So that's how I kind of decide where to work, where to give. And you just got to do some research, and you have to reflect and think about your priorities and your values too.
That's awesome. Yeah, two things you said there. 990 is so powerful. You should be reading that when you're evaluating a potential organization to give or to join or whatever it is. Check it out. And everyone should be rage giving right now. So love that. Going to use it lots. So we only have a couple minutes left. So I want to get to two questions we have in our chat. So the first one from Shelly. What do you recommend for nonprofits who are relatively new at the fundraising game and do not have major donors? How do you recommend relationship building during this time? Let's start with Katie. Are you good jumping on this one?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I think everyone gave pretty good examples about relationship building and stuff like that. But for a small organization, like, don't put so much pressure on yourself to have big, giant donors. Like, you're not there yet, and that's okay. You're in an early stage of the life cycle. Like, that would be crazy if you had large donors, because then they would assume that they're putting all their eggs in your basket. That's not kind of to ask of them either. So I would say slowly build up to it. Like, who are the people that are super engaged with you? And maybe you don't know where they're coming from or what they have capable in them. But you need to find those advocates, whether they give $5 or whether they give $100, because that $5 donor can someday turn into your major donor. You just never know as they grow up, as we and the millennials come into more money, as we start reaching out more. But don't put that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself when you're small. Just focus on building those relationships and they'll come to you naturally.
And Tanner, we'll toss it to you because I know you guys are a huge organization with lots of different programs, but you also have those programs outside of your major gifts. So what does that look like? What recommendation would you give there?
I think Katie's right of focusing on the relationships with your donors. And then Katie, I think you killed it on how to answer that question. I'll just add, make sure that you're really also taking the technical side of it seriously. Find a good CRM to manage your relationships with them. There's some very affordable nonprofit ones that have, even if you're small, if you at least get, some of your core data, it's really important because, sometimes staff changes over or, people move on, and it's really important, especially for small organizations, that's your safeguard to keep you stable. I know that a lot of very small charities, I work with a summer camp for handicapped kids as well, doing fundraising for them, and they have one staff member. So if that staff member moves on, you better hope that we have really good institutional things in place to make sure that whoever comes in after them can fulfill those responsibilities. So I would say just make sure that you're keeping track and that you're able to pass on those responsibilities if you need to.
Yeah, what are your thoughts, Hallie? Any advice?
I think too, really looking at your board and kind of crowd raising. I think that's really empowering your board to be fundraisers is one of the best assets. Having, you know, staff and leadership out there promoting around this as well will really help you in an authentic way. If you train your board to be able to have that conversation, usually board members are already passionate about you. So they're introducing friends, other people that might be around the same mission to what you're doing. So if you can just have them push that button a little bit to the next step to say, you know, have you ever considered giving? We're really looking for donations right now, or do you know someone else who would be able to give? I think that's a pretty authentic way to also raise some major gifts or get there.
And I think Tanner had an extra point, and then we'll go back to Jesse here.
Yeah, just one quick thing. One of the things that we are seeing in at least research is that small level giving is the least likely to change right now. If you look at any recessions, depressions, as a percentage of GDP, your giving from those people doesn't really change. I know our major gifts department probably took the biggest hit out of any area. So congratulations, you're in a better position maybe even. So don't be afraid of those small level donors. And people might even be more. I know that we saw some of our biggest donations during March and April as compared to previous years, because we know people care right now. You know, that might change as the economic impact of this kind of plays out. But for the most part, people really do care and will put out. So yeah, don't put yourself down. Katie's right.
I totally agree. Don't put yourself down. So we're a big organization too. We're 30 years old, but we haven't really, I'm the first trained fundraiser that's been in this role. So we're building up our major donors too. And you have to start with small donors. You have to. That's the best place to start, because they're already invested in your mission because they're giving, right? So my suggestion would be, when you get any gift, pick up the phone, call that donor, or if you don't have their, phone number, email them, and ask to get on the phone with them. Learn their story. Why did they give? Why do they care about your organization? Start developing a relationship with them from the get-go. If you want to create like a first-time donor like care package, that's always really nice. I love getting those. I give to a lot of organizations as a first-time donor just to see what they send me, which is always fun too. Interesting stuff you get. I think that you shouldn't be afraid to ask people to increase their gift, right? You can just say, would you consider increasing your gift from $5 to $10? Here's what it could do. And then, from 10 to 25, and then 25 to 50, and then bump it up. And then all of a sudden you'll have major donors. You just have to cultivate those relationships, and don't be afraid to make the ask. I mean, your mission is worth it. Your mission is worth it. That's it. It's worth it. So ask.
That sums up the whole thing, right? Your mission's worth it. So,
yeah.
So just ask. We have one quick question. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, push monthly giving. Push monthly giving.
Yes, yes, yes.
For those of you who don't know, Hallie was in at my organization before I came on board, and she built this beautiful monthly giving program for me to inherit, and it has done amazing things for Big Brothers Big Sisters. So she's 100% right on that. Okay, we have one quick question left in our chat here. So this is from Nick, and he's so right. It's important to understand our donor motivation. So do you guys regularly survey your donors? What kind of things do you include? How often? All that good stuff. Anyone who'd like to chime in?
So I dropped my email address in the thing there, the chat there. I have a donor survey that I send out as part of my qualification process. So it's a 90-day qualification plan, if you will. I'm happy to share some of my survey questions in there. They're mostly about communication in the qualification plan survey. But then I don't send out a survey per se, but I regularly check in with donors. So I ask donors, how are we communicating with you too much? How often do you want to hear from us? What would you like to see us do differently? And I just ask them when I'm on the phone with them anyway, or when I'm having a meeting with them, to get feedback right there. sometimes I'll forward newsletters out. They've already received the newsletter most likely, but I'll send it. I'll like forward it to them and say, hey, I'd love to hear your feedback on the newsletter. How did we do? Did you find any of these articles particularly interesting? So I'm not traditionally surveying them, but I'm kind of one-off asking questions to make sure that they're getting what they need. And then document every single thing in your database. Every single thing. You do it as a gift officer. You do it.
Love it. Yes. Big takeaways. Be sure you're using your CRM. It's really, really, really important. All right. I know we're up on our time here. If you have more questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and we'll send them out to our panelists. They can send out some answers. I'm volunteering a little extra time on their behalf to do that. But we are so grateful, and you guys really are the people on the call. When I am feeling burnt out, these are the people I reach out to. So I am so grateful for this group, and I'll throw it back to Luke.
Adrian, thank you so much. As always, spectacular work. I wanted to shout out also Megan. You've been incredible too. But everyone on this panel, oh my goodness, so much to learn. But we really want to thank Adrian again for really powering through this panel along with everyone here. I learned a lot personally, so I'll be sure to employ all your knowledge in what I'm doing. So really, really appreciate everyone here. Haley, Tanner, Katie, Jesse. Now we're jumping over to lunch. We'll be hanging out for a bit, but thank you so much for everything you're doing, and we'll see you soon.